Oh, what's up guys, welcome back to another video, and this is another Wendover Productions reaction, and this one has been suggested a lot by, especially the last few days, by a lot of you guys, and the video is the US Overseas Military Base Strategy. I'm going to be honest, I guess I do know what this is going to be about, because I have done videos in the past where it's touched upon the US military bases, I can't speak, which is nothing different. Military bases in countries around the world. They have a lot in the UK, a lot in Europe, a few in Asia, like just based all around the world. And I'm gonna guess that is what this video is gonna be about. I mean, it should be. That would make sense, but we're gonna see. Because if it's not, I don't know what else it could be. But this video has been suggested a lot, so I'm excited to get into it because, again, especially the last week or so, this is my most suggested video for sure. But we're gonna get into it. We're gonna see what this is about. Quickly, shout out to my Instagram and my Twitter. Links in the description for those interested. And yeah, let's just get into this one, man. Let's see what Wendover Productions has for us today.
This video was made possible by Brilliant. Learn complex topics simply
with Brilliant this
for
time,
20% off by being one of the first 200 to sign up at brilliant.org/Wendover.
Get your money, man.
If you ask the US military how many bases they have overseas, you won't really get an answer. They don't make it all too hard to find out about the larger ones: Ramstein Air Base in Germany, Thule Air Base in Greenland, Camp Hansen in Japan. American military has some...
That Thule Air Base seems like a very random location. I would have thought you'd want it somewhere that's sort of like more populated, but maybe that's not. I mean, I guess it works out for them, but the Greenland one seems like a very interesting spot to have a military base. But who knows, right?
Up on the closest thing to an official catalog of the U.S. military's real estate there is, the annual Department of Defense Base Structure Report. According to this document, the American military has some 514 sites outside of its borders, but there are some noticeable omissions to this list. For example, the U.S. has a rather secretive drone base in central Niger. However, according to this list, it doesn't exist. The US has more than 10 sites in Syria. However, according to this list, they don't exist.
Maybe they're trying to hide them? I mean, I guess we're going to get upon that.
The US has a satellite surveillance facility in Australia's Northern Territory, so well known, in fact, that it has a whole fictional TV show based on it, but according to this list, it doesn't exist.
So that's definitely more
in fact, according to this list, there are just 4 Defense Department installations in Africa: a base in Djibouti, a joint British-American base on Ascension Island, an NSA site in Kenya, and a naval medical research facility in Egypt. Of course, if you dig a little deeper into the vast archive of unclassified military documents, you find this: a slide from a presentation clearly showing 34 US military sites in Africa. With omissions such as these, one can assume that the total 514 number is far from the real count of...
I mean, basing off, they say that they've only got 4, but there's actually 34. There could be thousands. I mean, there probably is over 1,000 at least, but possibly more thousands than that. 2,000, 3,000. That's kind of crazy, you know? I didn't realise there was that many. I thought there was going to be like 200 at least. And I thought that would be a lot.
Of how many facilities the US military maintains abroad. Part of this could be attributed to the fact that it's sometimes tough to define what a military base is.
When you talk about influence...
Again, looking at the African continent, the only site that looks like what most would traditionally think of as an overseas military base is in Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. It is the only permanent, exclusive US military site, at least according to their own definition, on the continent, hosts about 4,000 members of the US military at a time, and is the primary base of operations for the US Africa Command. You see, the US military splits the world into 6 regions, each with their own infrastructure.
So Northern Command, Southern Command, Central Command, Indo-Pacific Command, European Command, Africa Command. That's interesting.
Of bases. Each has a hierarchy of sites. The highest, in the case of Africa Command, are those permanent full-blown bases, the one in Djibouti and the one on Ascension Island. One step below that are what are called cooperative security locations. These are, according to the US military's definition, host nation facilities with little or no permanent US personnel presence, which may contain pre-positioned equipment and/or logistical arrangements and serve both for security cooperation activities and contingency access. CSLs are useful to the US military because they are much less flashy and less permanent. They don't require the same kind of political capital as to set up a full-size base like the one in Djibouti. Bases are often unpopular and receive press scrutiny, both in the US and the host country, so small, few hundred-person CSLs have the advantage of being able to be set up with, essentially, no publicity. You can think of them as smaller versions of the kind of bases you find in Djibouti or Ascension Island, which can, rather quickly, become bigger bases should the need arise. The remaining 20 known sites on the continent are what are called contingency locations. Now, this terminology can be used for a lot of different types of facilities, but in essence, what it means is that these are temporary sites established as part of ongoing missions. For example, the contingency location in Garoua, Cameroon was set up for the Americans to provide logistics and intelligence support in the Cameroonians' fight against Boko Haram. What that actually means, though, when you break through the military's PR language, is that this is a drone base. Unlike other American drone bases, it's relatively easy to find out about the one in Garoua, perhaps because it's primarily home to surveillance drones rather than strike drones. For other contingency locations, though, it is much less clear what exactly their purposes are, and for some, they aren't even publicly acknowledged. For many, the US military just has small agreements with foreign governments, and the general public gets very little info at all. So the final real answer for how many US bases there are abroad is that we don't know. If you define every military installation as a base, compiling all publicly available information, one set of research reached a number of 800. Of course, the real number could be something far different from that, but as the general public, there's just no real way to know.
I just find it so funny how they're just everywhere in the world, and then you just have Russia and China and then India that just don't have any in them, but everywhere else there's just loads, and obviously like North Korea as well. But I just find that really, really you just see the differences. Like Europe's got so many, Africa's got a lot. There's a lot in Central America as well. God damn, there's loads in Central America.
But the next question that arises about the US's overseas presence is why. In the era of nuclear weapons that can obliterate any city on Earth in an hour, aircraft carriers sailing worldwide with more aircraft than some countries' air forces, and airplanes that could land troops in any country on Earth in a day, why does the US bother spending so much money maintaining bases in allied countries during peacetime?
That interests me as well because, I'm thankful for it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, why are they in our country? They're just those people who just get angered by that sort of stuff. I'm thankful for this because at the end of the day, it's the protection. It keeps the protection of the UK and Europe. But why do the US do it? Because they could probably do it and spend money in other sort of areas and benefit themselves a lot more. So that's something that I'm actually really intrigued to learn in this part now that's going to come up, I assume.
The primary reason has to do with a military concept known as the loss of strength gradient. This concept essentially theorizes that the further a conflict is away from a military's home country, the less military power that nation is able to bring to the fight. This is largely because it is, of course, complicated and expensive to bring troops and equipment over long distances. The book that originally defined this loss of strength gradient proposed that the way to counteract this effect was to establish bases outside of a country's home territory, since these can help reduce the effective distances to conflict, and, therefore, it's easier to bring more power to the fight. The US has certainly taken this concept to heart and has put quite a lot of work into trying to flatten out their loss of strength gradient. That is to say, they want to make sure it is just as likely that the US would win a war in East Asia as North America. As an example of how these bases aid that mission, much of the operations of the US's wars in Afghanistan and Iraq were conducted here, at Ramstein Air Base in Germany. This base and the other surrounding US military facilities in the Rhineland-Palatinate state make up the largest group.
I know this is irrelevant, but you see this area, this is the sort of area that I'm in from the UK. There's about 5 different bases just in this area alone, and that's so close to me. I find that so interesting. How many is there in the UK and in England? The majority of where they are is literally the county that I'm from. That just interests me. I don't know why, but I guess because the county I'm from there's just nothing going on here, but that just interests me. I'm not gonna lie.
Surrounding US military facilities in the Rhineland-Palatinate state make up the largest grouping of American service members in the world and one of the largest groupings of Americans anywhere outside the US. The city that Ramstein and many of the other facilities are in is home to only about 100,000 full-time residents. However, the American bases are staffed by more than 50,000 personnel at any given time. This makes Ramstein Air Base like a small American city in Europe. It has
That is
outposts
so
of plenty
interesting.
of American restaurant chains that you won't find anywhere else in Germany, Johnny Rockets, Chili.
This stuff blows my mind, man. When there's basically like mini countries, mini versions of countries in other countries, this stuff just messes with my mind. I find it so cool. I hope they have like sort of pictures like from like they're going to share sort of pictures from the street view, because this stuff, I don't know, this just blows me away,
These
man.
PF Chang's, in addition to an American-style department and grocery store. It has an American post office, an American high school, baseball diamonds, two
That's
American
crazy.
football fields.
That
and
is insane. That is wild, man. This I don't know why, but this just really does just make me think crazy things, man. It's literally just a small US town in just the middle of Europe, in Germany.
suburban-style housing, and even campuses of 4 American universities. University of
What?
Maryland, Oklahoma, Central Texas College, and Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Quite a lot of work is put into making sure that Ramstein is as similar to any base in the US as possible, both in terms of lifestyle and capability. One central role for Ramstein and other US bases in Europe during the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan was as a stopover point for personnel and cargo.
I want to look at this quickly, actually. I don't know. I want to see more of this. I know this is probably the random. This is a random time to do this, but I need to see this. Just more city and town. I don't know if that would make sense. What the hell? That is ridiculous, man. I'm guessing this helps with like homesickness as well, doesn't it? Like for the troops and the people like over in Germany. I just find this wild. It literally just looks like the US. What the hell? Oh, this stuff is really cool, man. I don't know why this piques my interest so much, but it does. Ah, mate. And it's 50,000 people as well, so it's a big town. Like the town, or the city that I live in is just under 200,000, so it is a relatively big sort of town.
En route to combat. Ramstein's convenient location, less than a 7-hour flight from all of the Middle East, where many of the US's recent military operations have been, makes it a pivotal logistics hub, since it would be far more complicated to fly personnel and cargo non-stop to theater over the more than 11-hour flight from the continental US to the Middle East. Still today, with less US presence in the Middle East, Ramstein plays a central role in getting US military members to Europe. There are regular flights, typically about twice a week, from Baltimore to Ramstein, in addition to a number of regular flights from stateside military bases like Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, and McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. These are not flights on commercial airlines, but rather charter flights available only to members of the military operated by charter companies like Atlas Air and Omni Air International.
Oh, wow.
Beyond its role as a logistics hub, Ramstein's geographic position plays a critical role in the US's use of drones in the Middle East. You see,
More on, I know I'll keep coming to it, but on the military base, is it being built, like, are they trying to expand the size of it as well, or is it at a point now where they're just keeping it at the same size and they're not like looking to make the town even bigger? And can you go there as like a tourist, or is it a place that specifically, like, say you're a German person, you live in Germany, you live in a town nearby, or you live in the actual town that's next to the military base, like, are you able to visit this area, or is it sort of like locked off and like sort of surrounded by gates or something?
American
I don't know if
drones are
that's
communicated
would be a thing
with
or
by
not, but-
satellite, but due to the distance between the Middle East and Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, where the communications from the different drone piloting sites across the US are centralized, a single satellite could not convey information from Creech to the Middle East. That's just because there's too much curvature in the Earth for a satellite at a reasonable orbit altitude to have line of sight with both areas. They could have one satellite relay info to another, but this would significantly increase the time it would take for the signal to travel from Creech to the drone, and when piloting and attacking remotely, one needs as close to real-time communications as possible. Therefore, the signals travel by fiber optic transatlantic cable from the US to Ramstein, where a relay station then sends the signal up to a satellite based over the area that can communicate with America's drones in the Middle East. Without Ramstein, these drones would not be nearly as capable. Beyond convenience and capability, another major reason for America's heavy overseas military presence is power projection. This is a term used by militaries that refers to, according to the US Department of Defense's definition, the ability of a nation to apply all or some of its elements of national power. In this context, it's essentially how fast a country can get to the fight if a fight should arise. Power projection is as much an offensive power as a defensive one. It's about making sure that every other country in the world knows that America can and potentially will respond to whatever they decide is a threat in a timely manner. According to the US Department of Defense, the 4 countries that currently present the greatest potential national threat to the US are Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea. Looking at the global map of bases, it's no coincidence that the greatest concentrations of overseas bases are near Russia's population center in the East, in the Middle East, and in East Asia. Meanwhile, there's relatively little US military presence in South America, Africa, South and Southeastern Asia, and Australia, since there are fewer threats to the US in these areas. Still though, the US military has a nearly permanent presence on every continent.
That's crazy,
even on
man.
Antarctica, where by international treaty militarization is banned, the US military skirts this regulation by dealing with the logistics of supplying American research bases, which is allowed by the treaty. Some
That
may
is
characterize this
incredible.
experience with Antarctic operations as convenient in the event of any future conflict.
Bro, they're even in Antarctica, man. That is just when you realise, yeah, they've got the whole world on lock at this point. Like, what? Antarctica? I swear there's not allowed to be, like, residents or people being allowed to live on Antarctica for, like, over a year. But still, this just sort of shows even more just the power the US has. A base in Antarctica, obviously they sort of what's the word, like, dodge the rules, etc. Dodge isn't the right word I'm looking for, but that's the sort of same context. But still, I just find that hilarious. Literally every continent on the
in
world.
this region. While the US's network of overseas bases is only a part of its overall power projection mission, which also includes its nuclear weapons, aircraft carriers, submarines, and more, the main messaging they convey is that the US can get to anywhere fast. But, predictably, these bases are controversial, both at home in the US and abroad. As one example, this is the island of Okinawa, Japan, and this is the land used by the US military. On this dense island of 1.5 million, 26,000 US service members man these sites.
What? That is
And
ridiculous.
this is the land used by the US.
That's a massive amount of the land that's just part of the US now. Like, do the US now own this land, or is it still Japanese land? The US just sort of patrol and protect it, kind of thing.
US military. On this dense island of 1.5 million, 26,000 US service members man these sites. While the Japanese government is supportive of the US presence in Okinawa and elsewhere in Japan, locally, there have been decades of tensions between the Okinawans and the US military. The US bases there have been an economic, social, and environmental burden on the island as, while the US military's presence in Japan as a whole is viewed largely as a benefit for the country, Okinawans are the ones that have to put up with having a large proportion of their home under the control of a foreign military. Okinawans reportedly feel like they've been ignored by mainland Japan, and they've therefore been protesting, particularly against a forthcoming base move to a new site on the island, for years. This is the story for pretty much every country that hosts US military bases. They're often considered by foreign governments as a benefit to the country as a whole, since it gives them an essence of protection by perhaps the most powerful military in the
people
world,
nearby.
but it comes at a burden to the communities that bases are physically located in.
I do see
In
that.
Okinawa, while the bases do provide a decent amount of employment for locals, it's now thought that the island could be better off economically with the land that these bases take up being used for commercial purposes. Back in the US, some believe that their tax dollars are being used to defend other
Yeah.
countries.
Two
Some
sides.
consider these overseas
Both sides.
bases antiquated in the era of international military alliances like NATO, extensive aviation infrastructure that can get US forces anywhere on Earth in a matter of hours, and the deterrent threat of nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, others would argue that they are crucial assets to US diplomacy and power projection. They would argue that their very existence maintains the US's superpower status. This is all to say, simply, that the US military's worldwide presence is controversial, but likely effective. They certainly do make the US military seem more formidable in the international eye, which many Americans would consider a positive, but the final grand question is, at what cost? With the cost in dollars, the
My
cost in
God, it's
geopolitical tensions, the cost in
crazy
community
money.
detriment, the simple cost in how the world views the United States as a country, is it worth it? If you're a viewer of Wendover Productions, you probably
Shout out
are
to Wendover
someone who
again,
likes
man.
learning about interesting things.
Getting us money again, you know how it is, man. What's the site called again? It is Brilliant. Shout out to him and getting his brilliant ad. Last time it was Skillshare. But I love that, man. He deserves it. His channel is incredible. I love these videos so much. And also, thank you for suggesting this video a lot. I've had a lot of suggestions, especially in the last week or so, to do this reaction. I love this sort of stuff, man. I'm really sort of learning on the job. That's not the right sort of term I'm trying to look for, but I'm learning as I go. But the more I learn, the more I learn, the more intrigued I am. And that's just that military base. I forget the name. What's something Stein? How have I forgot the name of it already? This one just blew my mind. It's Ramstein. Like this sort of stuff's just crazy, man. It really is. Like there's a whole US town in another country, and there is more of these sort of towns within other countries, and it's just crazy to me. It's absolutely ridiculous. Next week on Wendover Productions, how the CIA interrogates people who release national secrets on national. The Navy with more aircraft than some countries' air forces. The US Navy has the second largest air force, and guess who is the first? The US military bases, Wendover. Let's talk about the charter flights. He loves his planes, doesn't he? That's like a meme on his channel. Iran president, write that down. Write that down. Iran put their country in the middle of our bases. US military, hippity hoppity, your land's my property. So this is the reason why Ramstein made the song We're All Living in America. I don't know, this Ramstein one really has piqued my interest. I don't know if it's Ramstein. I don't know why I just don't like that. Well, I might do a video on this, just maybe my second channel or something, because I don't know, this has really intrigued me. The Ramstein Air Base. I mean, look, maybe I'll do it. If you guys want it, I'm down to do it because, I don't know, this has just really intrigued me. But this whole video was incredible. And, yeah, when it comes to Wendover Productions, I'm down to do so many different reactions, so many new reactions, because his channel it's just great, man. It really is. And thank you again for suggesting this video a lot. I've got to talk slower, man. And, yeah, we're going to keep up with the reactions. I didn't post yesterday, but just needed a little break. I don't want to burn myself out, and I actually want to thank you guys also because I get a lot of messages saying take a break like every day or every other day because we don't want you to burn out, etc. And I really do appreciate it. Like it means a lot that you are all like supporting me like that and actually like looking out for me. But at the same time, I love doing these reactions. Burnout will always come. I've had issues with it in the past, but when it comes to like these sorts of videos, I could watch these all day. So there's no worry for that at me at the moment. But I do understand that if I do loads of videos on my main and the second channel, there may be a point where I just need to take a little break. So I'm going to probably take breaks every like few days, every like 5-6 days. But maybe not. Maybe it's just going to keep coming. And yeah, I'm loving it at the moment. I'm loving these reactions and I'm thankful for the support. So we're going to keep up with the grind, keep up with these learning about these different types of subjects, etc. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Until next time, like, subscribe, peace.